The laws of blessing, brachos, contains one positive mitzvah to bless God's great and holy name after eating a meal. This mitzvah is explained in the following chapters. It's a positive mitzvah, scriptural origin, to bless God after eating satisfying food, as it says. When you have eaten and it's satiated, right, you need to be satiated, you shall bless God, your Lord. Torah itself requires a person to recite grace only when he eats to the point of satisfaction, as implied by the above verse. When you have eaten and you are satisfied, you shall bless. The sages, however, ordain that one should recite grace after eating an amount of bread equal to the size of an olive. So that's rabbinic law that you have to do it, right? Similarly, the rabbis ordain that we recite blessings before partaking of any food. That's rabbinic law, not biblical. Again, biblical law is only one time. You ate bread, you're satiated, and then you have to bless. Right. But the rabbis came and said, no, anytime you partake of food, you have to bless God. Even when one wants to eat a slightest amount of food or drink, one should recite a blessing and then derive benefit from it. Similarly, when smelling a pleasant fragrance, one should recite a blessing and then smell. Anyone derives benefit from this world without reciting a blessing is considered as if misappropriated a sacred article, right? In other words, this world belongs to God, and God says you want to partake and have a benefit from it, you need to bless me. When you bless me, then you have permission to partake. Rabbis also ordained that one should recite blessing after eating and drinking, provided one drinks a revius, which is about 3 ounces. If you drink 3 ounces, or eats a kazayas, which is like 1 slice of bread. A person who merely tastes food is not required to recite a blessing before partaking of it or afterwards, unless you partake of a revius, right? Because you're not eating it to be satisfied. Number 3, just as we recite blessings for benefit, which we derive from the world, we should also recite blessings for each mitzvah before we fulfill it. All right, so now this is a different category. This is blessings for mitzvahs, right? It's not about a benefit, it's about fulfillment of the mitzvah. So the sages do many blessings as expressions of praise and thanks to God and as a means of petition so that we will always remember the Creator, even though we have not received any benefit or performed the mitzvah. He's going to give all these. We're in chapter 1 of blessings.
One of blessings?
Chapter 1, we're now halacha 4.
Thank you.
Thus, all the blessings can be divided into 3 categories. Blessings over benefit, right, like food. Blessings over mitzvahs, like when you put on tefillin, right? Blessings recited, expression of praise and thanks to God as a means of a petition so that we'll always remember the Creator and fear Him. That would be like, when you see a rainbow, or when it's thunder, lightning, that kind of stuff. The text of the blessings was ordained by Ezra in his court. Ezra was one who led the Jewish people after the destruction of the first Holy Temple, and the Jews lived in Babylon. He brought them to the second Holy Temple and the building of the second Holy Temple. It is not fit to alter it, or to add to it, or detract from it. Whoever alters the text of the blessing from that ordained by the sages is making an error. A blessing that does not include the mention of God's name and His sovereignty over the world is not considered a blessing. Right? Baruch atah Hashem, Hashem Elokeinu, Melech Olam, King of the universe. Right? Hashem, our God, King of the universe. Right? You need to have that. Melech Olam is not considered a blessing unless it is recited in proximity to a blessing which meets these criteria. All these nuances we'll see as we move along. Number 6, all the blessings may be recited in any language, provided one recites a translation of the text ordained by the sages. So you can do it in English. A person who changes the text fulfills the obligation unless, since he mentioned God's name, his sovereignty, and the subject of the blessing, although he did so in an ordinary language. Right? So you did it in English, for example. So you mentioned God's name, you mentioned his King of the universe, right? And the subject in hand, like, who's commanded me to put on tefillin, right? For example. But there's some kind of text change. You fulfill because you have the basic elements, even though you shouldn't change it from the text. We're going to go through a deep meaning of a blessing. The Rambam doesn't, but it won't be today. Not today. We'll go through a deep understanding of what it means, a blessing. For his censure, recite all the blessings loud enough for him to hear what he is saying. Nevertheless, a person who does not recite a blessing out loud fulfills his obligation, whether he verbalizes the blessing or merely recites it in his heart. What is going on over here? Opposite what we just learned, right? Uh-huh. Pretty sure the Rambam says we have to verbalize somewhere. Hmm. So it's interesting that the Rambam says this because no one else holds like that. Where does he get that? Wow. I was quoting someone that the Rambam said that if you do the Shemona Esrei, like at a low voice, it's okay, but if you don't verbalize it, it's not. But now he just says merely recites it in his heart. But all the other comment, the Shulchan Aruch, the Tur, the Rashi, and others, they disagree. But I don't even know where, because this is based on the Talmud. The Talmud says, here a lav kidibur dam. Like, this is Talmudic already. So I'm not clear what his source is. Okay, we have to look more into it, which won't do right now. Whenever one recites a blessing, one should not make an interruption between the blessing and the subject which the blessing is recited. If one makes an interruption with other matters, one must recite the blessing again. And what you did was make a blessing in vain, right? If, however, one makes an interruption which relates to the subject of the blessing, one does not have to repeat the blessing. Like, let's say you made a motzi lechem min aretz, and you realize, oh, there's no salt there to dip into, for example, right? So you can say, salt, right? That's not called an interruption because the salt is there for the dipping in of the bread into salt. That wouldn't be considered an interruption. Now, of course, better to have the salt, there in advance, but
You have to swallow or it's complete.
yeah. Yeah. What is implied when a person recites a blessing over bread and before eating, it says, "Oh, bring salt." I was a little too quick to give my example because the Rambam now brings the example of bring salt. Bring food. Give so and so to eat. Bring food for the animal or the like. He does not need to repeat the blessing. Because interesting, the salt you need it in order that you can, right? But here it's even other things. Give salt to the animal, bring bread to the animal, or food to the animal, rather, right? Since it's related with food, and you made a blessing on food. Very interesting. A person who is ritually impure is permitted to recite all the blessings. This applies regardless of whether the impurity is of a type in which one can purify himself on the same day or not. A person who is naked should not recite a blessing until he covers his genitals. To whom does this apply? To men. Women may recite blessing while naked, provided they sit with their genitals facing the ground. The following of principles applies to all blessings. Although a person has already recited them and fulfilled his obligation, he may recite them again for others who have not fulfilled their obligation, so that they can fulfill their obligation. There is, however, one exception: blessings over the benefit from which is not associated with a mitzvah. In this instance, one may not recite the blessing for others unless one enjoys benefit together with them. Right? So you have to have a benefit. So you're making I can't make a blessing for you, B'rei Priya eats, and you eat the apple and I don't. Right? I can make the blessing for you, but I have to eat the apple or a fruit at least together with you.
Also, in other words, if someone's eating an apple and you're eating an apple, you say the bracha, he can eat the apple without saying the bracha.
Yeah, he has an amen. Right. Right.
You like apples.
I like fruit, yes. Nevertheless, one may recite blessings for benefit which are associated with the mitzvah, eating matzah on Pesach and reciting Kiddush on Shabbos and festivals for others. They may then eat and drink, even though the one who recites the blessing does not eat and drink with them. So let's say you make Kiddush. Let's say you make Kiddush already. You did your mitzvah Friday night, and now you need to make Kiddush for someone else. So you could do that. Even though you're making a blessing, B'rei Priya Gofen again, you already made it. You're doing it for someone else to fulfill a mitzvah. It's connected with food, but still it's a mitzvah. If it was only to make the blessing B'rei Priya Gofen and not the entire Kiddush, then you can't do it if you're not having benefit from it. If you've already made that blessing, right?
Amen is not enough.
Huh?
Amen is not enough. If you
Listen to what we're talking about. We're talking about the person. I made a blessing. If I made a blessing on an apple already, I can't make a blessing now for you for the apple because I've already made my blessing on my apple. And you answer amen. You can't do that.
Kiddush.
Kiddush you could, even though Kiddush also incorporates eating because there's a mitzvah element in it. And a mitzvah, I could say the blessing for you for the mitzvah. Because benefit means that's a different category of mitzvah. That's a category of blessing of mitzvah. That I can help you with. But benefit, mitzvah, a benefit, I can't help you if I already had the benefit. Right?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to stop here.